Mr. Dickens, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
If we're going to be taking additional items, I think that we ought to have the public speak to it. I know, it might add additional time, but I wanted to amend the agenda to introduce or allow public comment. If there's new items, I want to hear different perspectives on those items.
All right, you have a motion and proper second to further amend the agenda to allow for public comment. Now, just really quickly now, where do you want the public comment to occur?
Yeah, it needs to occur like now or ahead of the. Well, I guess I wouldn't know what during the item and before the item.
Okay. I don't have a problem. We've already turned this meeting into a regular meeting. We can now turn it into a committee of the whole meeting. It's fine. We got all day and we got all night. We got until Christmas if necessary. So now, but I think it's important, Mr. Dickens.
Yes.
It sounds like you want to achieve something specifically in terms of allowing for comment in connection with specific items, right?
Correct. Pension items. Well, actually, it would be good to have a public comment now.
Okay, so let's add a public comment section. I think, Madam Clerk, please also clarify. Who seconded it? Okay, you had a motion from Mr. Dickens. It was seconded by Mr. Young. Let's go ahead and, are there any questions or comments related to the motion to further amend the agenda to add for a public comment section starting really now after we handle the adoption of the agenda? Mr. Young.
I was just going to make that point, Mr. President. It's probably more appropriate for us to conclude the adoption of the agenda and place it at some point after that.
It will be right after
rather than have public comment now. Let's complete the adoption of the agenda and finalize that, and then open the floor for public comment.
No, that would be the next item after adopting the agenda would be legislation for consideration. So we would do public comment right after this adoption.
Mr. Dickens, that makes sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. So yes, so that would be the next item as dictated by the agenda. All right. Do we have any other questions regarding the motion to further amend the agenda to add for a section for public comment? All right, there are no more questions related to that. Madam Clerk, let's take the vote on the motion to further amend.
The vote is open. Please vote. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed.
Motion to further amend. To amend for public comment.
13 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, 13 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. So the agenda has been amended to add for additional public comment or public comment. All right. So, do we have any other motions related to the agenda as amended? All right. Since we do not have any other questions, comments, and/or motions related to this item on the agenda, which is the adoption of the agenda, let's take the vote. I need a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. All right, we have a motion from Ms. Shepherd. It's seconded by Mr. Shook. If there are no questions, if there's no unreadiness, Madam Clerk, let's take the vote on the motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
The vote is open. Would everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 14 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, 14 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. the agenda as amended is adopted, and for the public's clarification and council members who may or may not be clear, we have amended the agenda to allow for items to be read in and considered at the end of the meeting, unlimited. And we've also amended the agenda to allow for public comment, which will commence now. The general rules for public comment that we institute or use during a regular meeting will apply here. You have a total of 2 minutes to provide comment. Someone can give time to you, but you have to let us know that beforehand, and we have to get that clear. We will not go through the process of having you sign up because this amendment was just made, so this council, we will endure with working through this person to person to person as you decide to speak. There's no limit to the number of people who are allowed to provide comment during this portion in the agenda. So if you are here and you'd like to provide public comment, let's go ahead and get started. Now, Madam Clerk, do you want to, or Deputy Clerk, do we want to, you're going to take names of folks as they come to the lectern?
Please identify themselves and we'll note their names.
Okay.
We're also timing, but it won't be projected because it's a different system.
Got it. Okay. So you'll have 2 minutes total to provide comment. Ms. Shepherd.
Well, Mr. President, I just want to make sure that as we go down through this process, that if people walk in right now, at what point are we stop? If people continue to come in to have public comment, so in terms of the time, 2 minutes and maybe one person, but if people continue to come in, at what point will we stop public comment?
The general rule is that we don't limit. We don't limit the number of people. We limit the amount of time each speaker has to 2 minutes per speaker, but we don't limit the number of speakers. You know. Well,
isn't that a process with a regular council meeting where you sign in at 1 o'clock? Once the council meeting starts, you cannot sign in any longer.
The complication now is that we've just made the amendment right here, right now, without notice to the public that they would have an opportunity to provide public comment. And so we've added it to the agenda, so the public now has the ability to speak. And so while we're in public comment, I would just say we allow for public comment.
I make a motion that we allow public comment for 1 hour, no more than 1 hour, if not less.
Okay, there's a motion and a proper second to limit public comment to 1 hour, which we can do. A second from you, Ms. Winslow. Any discussion on that motion? Madam Clerk, let's take the vote.
One moment. And slow. The vote is open. Please vote. No, Dickens. Where is he? Would everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 9 yeas, 5 nays.
All right, 9 yeas, 5 nays. The motion carries. Public comment is limited to a total of 1 hour. And so now we'll commence with public comment. We are now open for public comment. Yes, come forward, Ms. Murphy. I'll obviously give your name, and then we'll acknowledge the next speaker.
Good morning, Council. I'm Gina Pagnata Murphy, President of PACE, and I would like to give my time to the Chair of our Pension Board, Doug Strachan.
Okay. You'd like to give 2 minutes to Doug Strachan?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to donate their time to Mr. Strachan? Okay. Your name, ma'am? All right, Ms. Hall, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much. What's the total? Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to donate time? I'll note that you have, that Mr. Strachan has a total, or any speaker has a total of 14 minutes that they can speak, so a total of...
It's 14 can be donated, but
Yes.
there plus
16,
theirs, it's
exactly.
16.
So 7 people can donate time. At this point, we've had 6 people to donate time to Mr. Strachan. Is there anyone additional?
That'll work.
All right, so we have. So, Mr. Strachan, you have the maximum amount of time that you can be given to speak. So we'll come to you shortly. And yes, sir, at the lectern, your name.
Good afternoon. I'm Jason Segura, International Brotherhood of Police Officers.
I'm going to stop you right there. Is there anybody who wants to donate their time to Mr. Segura? Okay, there being none, go right ahead.
Gotcha. Had I known I'd be doing this, I would have brought my reading glasses, but there's been no delivery, either by email or courier, of the actuary study completed and referenced on the November 29, 2017 Executive Committee. There has also been no discussion of what the expected estimated salary of the board chair would be. There's also been no testimony of any industry experts that about the administrative costs associated with the pension board, that the board would be reduced. There has been no testimony of any industry experts that the super board would be able to negotiate better, lower basis points by the money managers. There has not been any documentation presented by the administration, and CFO Jim Beard and/or Commissioner Yancey disagreed with decisions made by any of the 3 pension boards, which resulted in loss of revenue. There has not been any documentation presented by this administration where CFO Jim Beard and/or Commissioner Yancey has disagreed with any decisions to retain a money manager made by any of the 3 pension boards, which resulted in a loss of revenue. No new legislation or substitution has been introduced to correct the current board's makeup. And I just don't understand what the rush is, why we can't wait until next year. This is our money, we worked for it. There seems to be no reason to rush to get this done. Our pensions have been progressing nicely. I think we just need to put some more work into it. Let's do an actuarial study, let's slow this thing down, and let's make the best decision. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. I want to just have you hold for a second, Mr. Strachan, since you have 16 minutes. There's a gentleman that's standing here. Did you want to come forward and state your name?
Good morning. Richard Houston, President of the Southern States Police Benevolent Association, Atlanta chapter.
I'm going to hold you for 1 second. Is there anyone who wants to donate their time to Mr. Houston? Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm here to speak on the City Ordinance 17 TAC 0 TAC 1589. And as my predecessor who came before said, I would ask that the council not approve this ordinance. This ordinance has been, what I believe to be, has been rushed through. A lot of studies hadn't been done. A lot of my members don't understand why that this last council meeting we're trying to pass this, because it does concern them. The police pension has been doing quite well, and they like the direction that the police pension is going. So they don't want the disruptions in that progress that the police pension has been made. And I'm here to ask the council to vote no on this pension, on this ordinance, and wait for the new administration. And please wait for the next council to come in so that we can have more productive discussions about what we want to do with all 3 pensions. So I'm here to ask that this council not vote for this ordinance that's before it today. And I do thank you.
All right.
And if I don't see anybody else, I'd like to wish everybody happy holidays.
Same to you. Okay, all right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, come forward.
I'm Ed Emerson. I'm the attorney for the City of Atlanta Firefighters Pension Board.
All right, is there anyone who'd like to donate their time to this gentleman. All right. Go right ahead.
Just a couple points quickly. Yesterday, we had our pension board meeting. A non-binding recommendation was requested from our board. A motion was made by the city financial officer of City of Atlanta to not recommend the proposed ordinance. So he made the motion. It was seconded and unanimously passed at our pension board meeting yesterday to not recommend the proposed ordinance today. So unanimous non-recommendation. Secondly, I heard the word compromise earlier in discussion for this proposed ordinance. My understanding from my client that there has been no compromise, none compromise whatsoever. I was outside of the meeting yesterday. Attorneys were not allowed into the meeting that occurred yesterday with several council people and members of representative boards. So I was not in the meeting, but when they came out, nobody said that there was a compromise. And again, I have provided a letter to you guys regarding any proposed substitute or amendment to the proposed ordinance, that the formalities have not been followed. And I want to remind you guys of the formalities of Section 3-507 of the City Charter for any amendment or substitute of the proposed ordinance. Thank you.
All right, and if you could state your name and your capacity again for the benefit of the clerk.
My name is Ed Emerson. I'm an attorney at Morris, Manning, Martin, represent the City of Atlanta Firefighters Pension Board.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Yes, ma'am. Come right on up. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Mashia M. Bean. I'm for the ordinance number 170159-3. The investment firm that managed our money for the General Employees Fund quit working for us a few weeks ago because they said that their reputation was more important than what they were paying them, and the General Employees Pension Board was too dysfunctional and unprofessional for them to keep working with. The emails and the letters from the investment firm are available today for anyone to read. It's an embarrassment and a shame. Thank you.
Bring it up. Okay. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Charles. I am here on behalf of 17051589. The legislation won't even take the effect until the new mayor is in office. So the mayor's appointment will be from Mayor Bottoms. This is not a power grab by Mayor Reed, but one last measure to fix the pension system to protect workers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Harold Swinger Ross, and I'm here regarding Ordinance 1701589. The pension legislation is one of the recommendations from the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Waste and Efficiency, which had representatives from the business community, employee unions, including police and fire, and council members. The legislation is their recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, Mr. Gertis.
Good morning, council members. My name is Paul Gertis. I'm the president of the Local 134 Firefighters Fire Union here in Atlanta. Speaking about this, yesterday there was some discussion. Over the last couple of weeks, there actually was some good discussion involving city council members, the Finance Executive Committee, and the pension boards and the labor unions, in which discussion was done and progress was made. And there was really good synergy in the room about the discussion about this legislation. We haven't come to a full resolution at this particular point, and I'm here to echo the point that Mr. Emerson had made with the Fire Pension Board, that we are in support of their decision, and we will follow their recommendations when it comes to a final resolution with this paper today. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gertis. Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Philos Kanata.
You may want to repeat that for the benefit of the clerk.
My name is Philos Kanata.
All right, that's a nice name.
I
love you too.
The people fighting this made their endorsement. They picked their candidate months ago and they didn't win. No one owes any favors now. This is about making the right choice. So we just ask that y'all do the right thing.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kimberly Ford, chaplain for the Still Standing Foundation. City workers need to make sure our pension dollars and our tax dollars are better managed. We need every dollar there for our retirements, but these three boards are not delivering that right now. They hire bad advisors and make poor decisions, which then cause workers to invest more, but as a result have less of a return. A single, stronger board will result in better management and cost savings for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shakir, and then Mr. Kessler, are you waiting to speak too? Are you just waiting? Or okay, now you're good. Mr. Shakir.
Yes, Ron Shakir, Southwest Atlanta. I was concerned about public comment not publicly being on notice that the public can speak at a meeting. So I'm glad, Mr. Dickens, in that you all passed that ability to be able to do that. But whereas there's amendment that can be added, I think that we should be able to comment or know something about an amendment that may come on the floor before we are denied the opportunity. And if it do come in, if an amendment do come forward, I think the public ought to be able to comment on that, because we have seen at the last full council meeting, we saw platforms that was privatized, like Public Access. That's been a platform for great conversation where Jose Williams used as a format, and now that format has been privatized with great questions. Great questions. The whole process, but to see it go forward in the midnight hour like it did is very questionable. And as a citizen, we have a right and should have a right to go into some kind of public hearing or public engagement before that kind of action happens, especially an institutional thing where the public or the voice of the public is being shrunk every day, where the public engagement with elected officials are being taken away every day. And to see a public access station taken away to private industry, with there's many questions about that procurement process, with those who are on their way out to do such a thing, to wag their tail and knock down the voice of the public, is shameful. So I don't know what Mr. Hall have interest of. I just had a sidebar with him, and but I think that anything that's going to be added to the amendment, I know it's like a walk-in maybe, and maybe we don't, which is the norm, but I think I've said what I have to say. But if anything of great impact on this community comes down in the midnight hour, I think it's unfair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shakir. The clerk, Mr. Kessler, before you start, council members, the clerk has reminded me that any papers that are going to be read in at the end for immediate consideration should be in Elms as a matter of protocol before we get to them. So to the extent that you are planning to, we won't be able to vote on them. So to the extent that you're planning to introduce papers at the end, I would encourage you, if you're writing the paper yourself with your staff, or if you're writing the paper, or if the administration is writing the paper and is going to give it to you to introduce, please get it into Elms as soon as possible. And I'll make that announcement again to the extent that we don't see any papers show up as the clerk notifies me. All right. That's the first public service announcement. Ms. Shepherd.
I just want to make sure it's a point of clarity. You're saying to go ahead and do it now so it can be in Elms. You're not saying because it's not in Elms that we can't do it. You're saying that if it's going to happen, you need to go ahead and do it as quickly as possible so it can be in Elms?
Yes, it should be in Elms. The clerk just strongly advised.
Strongly advise you what now?
Madam Clerk.
Members of council, as you've noticed, we are voting on with the ELM system today, and how that system operates is that all legislation needs to be in the system. If it's not in the system, we would not be able to pull up a vote on it. We'll have to take those votes, if the president allows them, by hand, like we did the earlier motion. Well, it shouldn't be difficult. Those papers are being created someplace. The creator of the legislation should easily be able to assure that they are dropped into ELMS.
I just want to make sure in terms of clarity also, because we have introduced papers on the floor at our regular council meetings and actually moved them through with no problems. If you're saying that the reason we can't do it today is because it's AMS, which obviously is still not correctly working right, and I don't need the whole year we didn't use AM, and now the last meeting of the year we're going to use AM. I don't understand that. So to that point, my position is we should follow what we've done on a regular basis throughout the year, with AMS, without AMS. If people have the right, we've made the decision that people have the right to introduce their resolutions, and it should be done. So that's just my position.
Should I say something or don't say? I said. I understand your point, Ms. Shepherd. However, the ELMS system, it was fully known that within the ELMS system, legislation has to be in the system. The way we've done it all year, it has been very difficult because...
Why are we using ELMS today?
We thought it was going to be a short meeting. We're testing it for next year because we do plan to move forward with ELMS next year.
Oh, no. Well, I'm opposed to this. Obviously it's not working.
It's working, Ms. Shepherd.
Madam Clerk, I disagree with this whole process in terms of a technicality of something we've been doing all year. So I'm just going to say that. I don't know what my other colleagues feel, but I have problems with that. I want to make sure that today, if a legislation is going to be introduced today, we have the right to do that, not based on some technicality.
Well, let me be clear. If a council member brings a paper and they want to introduce it, at the end, we've made a motion to allow for that to happen. So as a matter of courtesy, I'm not going to deny that. But I think what the clerk essentially is asking for is just a little respect and consideration in terms of getting these items into ELMS. And so, council members, I would just ask and just reinforce what the clerk has said. If you're going to introduce a paper, or if you are going to carry in a paper from the administration and introduce it as your own, please try to get it into ELMS as a matter of courtesy so that we can expedite this, if at all possible. I know, Madam Clerk, you thought this was going to be a short meeting, but it's turned into a regular council meeting, and so that would give us a little more time to do that. So that's my request of you all, council members, if you would just do that, particularly Mr. Hall, to the extent that you have papers coming in. Mr. Kessler, you have it.
Good morning, City Council. Kyle Kessler, downtown resident. Thank you for your years of service, and for those of you who are carrying on, I look forward to working with you again in the future. I am here to speak about the second resolution on the agenda, which is regarding the Trinity Lot project, the vacant lot just across from City Hall that's been vacant since 2007 when the core building was demolished. The parking deck, the government center parking deck, was constructed. Those plans were modified to allow for affordable housing to go on that corner lot. Obviously, we went into a downturn. There wasn't a lot of construction going on. Coming out of the downturn, the administration decided to hold a design competition in 2011. There were over 80 entries to put an urban farm on that lot. There were 3 finalists selected in 2012, and then there was radio silence. That radio silence has continued to this day until on the agenda for today's meeting we have a proposal for $3 million worth of improvements of some kind, which I've not seen any plans for this lot. It has not been publicly vetted. It's not been discussed. I've not seen any plans. I would ask that before we get any sort of new proposal, we make sure that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's and understand why affordable housing does not work, why an urban garden does not work, and it doesn't make sense to pass this at a specially called meeting after the end of normal council meetings, when we have plenty of time going forward to figure out how this decade-long vacant lot can be better utilized going forward. So thank you for your consideration, and please, let's get resolution on what we actually need to get resolution on, rather than passing this resolution in haste at the last minute. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kessler.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Angelique Edwards, speaking on 17-01589. Having one pension board will have zero impact on paychecks and zero impact on pension checks. It just means there will be more money in their accounts because we won't have to pay 3 different law firms, 3 different investment firms, and 3 different accounting firms. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Madam Commissioner.
Hi, Yvonne Calgary-Yancey, a resident of the City of Atlanta, born and raised in Southwest, currently in Councilmember Shook's district. I have the pleasure of serving on the boards, and so I get to watch what actually happens. Most people don't come to our meetings, despite them being public. Most people aren't engaged to hear the discussion or lack of discussion that takes place. I think that the boards have done the best they can do. I have nothing negative to say about the board structure. I do believe, however, as fiduciaries and taxpayers, we have to acknowledge that there are improvements that can be made, and that should be made. It would be terrible to have the work that this council, this administration, and frankly, the stakeholders who receive the benefit that pensioners have put into, to have it unwound over ego or listening to people who actually have other things to gain. I have nothing to gain. I am not in this plan. I don't get anything out of it. But I do talk to pensioners routinely. And I talk to employees. Most of our employees cannot come to these meetings and speak. We've got lots of employees which are professional spokespeople. They don't represent the employee group. There are 5,000 people in the general employee plan. They're not here. We cannot let decisions be made by the people who have taken off time from work, who are the most vocal or the squeakiest wheel. We have to think about what's best for the entity. And I think what's best for the entity is looking at a full-scale review of governance. Governance matters. Training matters. People make better decisions with information. And I hope that this council will consider it. I'm not going to be an employee of the City of Atlanta. Right? I'm a taxpayer. And as a taxpayer, I want this body and the next body to think about the financial backstop of this plan, which are taxpayers. And frankly, the employees who give 12 to 13% of their hard-earned pay. Our average salary is $42,000 a year. They put a lot of money in this plan. So it's important for them to be heard and represented appropriately, and that is not by stakeholders who don't have any skin in the game. Thank you.
All right. You're up.
Hello, sir. My name is Tony Williams. I'm here as a retired police officer. I've listened to them talk about the pensions and not performing. The police, as you know, the administrations previously had influence over our pension. Money was missing, and the police have done due diligence. They hired the people they needed to hire. We have the funds in our plans that we need, and we're going forward. We're doing correct investments. We spent time, we spent money, and I don't know what the jail employees did or who actually has more control, but the police, and as a retired police officer, we want our pension to be managed and controlled by the police pension board and our pension people that we vote in, because they have our best interests in heart. And if you look at the way we've done our plan, the money we've made, we've looked after the investment, we've looked after the interests of the city people that are paying taxes, and we're actually doing what we're supposed to do with the resources we're given. And by allowing an administration to have influence or divvy out our money would put us in harm's way. I retired last year on December the 13th, and I haven't made it a year yet. And in the last 3 weeks, a police officer that retired the same day I did, he died. One that retired 14 months died. And their family needs their money that they put in and people are looked after. And we don't want our money to be affected by an administration or someone that doesn't have our best interests at heart.
Thank you very much. Okay, I know we've got Mr. Stratham. Before you do that, since you
You got a bunch of time. Is there anybody else who wants to speak for 2 minutes? Anybody else?
Mr. President, I'm Dan Fainer. I'm counsel for the General Employees Pension Fund. I intend to speak following Mr. Strachan. If he doesn't use the entirety of his time, I expect that he'll donate.
Wait, no, you're going to have 2 minutes unless someone else donates. Now, someone else was behind, and then people can donate your time. That's fine to do if they haven't donated their time already. Ma'am, behind, did you want to speak as well? After, okay. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, okay, you're up. How do you pronounce your last name again?
It's Strachan.
Stratton.
So I want to really thank all of you for allowing this accommodation for public comment. This is a very important issue, as was 1826, which was recently passed, because it has a big financial impact. There's a lot at stake. I also want to thank Commissioner Yancey for reminding me to differentiate between my opinions and those that my board's already decided on, and I'll endeavor to do that. Let me start out by saying just me, right? I believe that we have a bunch of honorable people in this room and honorable people that are involved in this effort to be able to do what's best. We just differ on how we think we're going to get there. You got honorable people and you have lofty aims, which is to make something that was started, an early progenitor of these type of plans was the world's richest man, Andrew Carnegie. Actually seeded several multi-billion-dollar pension plans that are in existence today. And the difference between good plans and bad plans is, as was stated today, governance and then following that governance. But when you have bad execution, bad things happen. So we can all look in the newspaper and see examples of pensions that are continually having problems, and it's always the same thing. It's either insufficient governance or more often not following the governance that they already have. Now here's a couple facts, because we're dealing with a lot of emotion, a lot of anecdote. You may have heard someone say, well, we're in the top 5% of public plans, or we're in the top 10%, or the top 3% of public plans, and those sound impressive, but those are against peer groups, and those are snapshots in time. Let me give you some facts. Since 2011, since we undertook historic pension reform, and pension reform that was needed, we all owe a debt of thanks to Honorable Mayor Kasim Reed for undertaking that, because we want a pension that's viable and sustainable. Since that time, the 5-year geometric average return for the General Employees Pension Fund has been 7.8%. The actuarial target is 7.5%. That's a 30 basis point spread and increase over the actuarial target. We've had years as high as 18%, and we've had years as low as 0.5%. That's how it works with returns that are, when we have things that we're looking for the long haul. Now, here's another fact. We have a process in place. Commissioner Yancey mentioned governance. The process is in place. It's laid out in Section 3-507 of the City Charter. It's not red tape. It's not a speed bump. Moving quickly is good in many cases. Firefighters have to act quickly. Police have to act quickly. Sometimes we all have to act quickly. But acting too quickly, given circumstances, is defined as haste. That process stipulates that we have an actuarial report. The actuarial report is actually an estimate in the case of 1826, and it's probably, maybe we think less than of an estimate when it comes to 1589. We want something more along the lines of evaluation. When we're going to incur costs of millions of dollars per year, or potentially have losses of $1 million per year, we want something like a valuation study, which is many more hours and at much greater cost, but with much greater detail and much greater certainty. This section of the code is designed as a prophylaxis against costly mistakes, things we'll have to live with for a long time, things that are not easily undone. I'm not going to hash out this whole process. I think, again, we have a lot of honorable intentions, but a lot of missed opportunities to actually follow this process and have a much better result. We understood at our last pension board meeting that we weren't going to see a substitute per the council's will at the last full council meeting, but we did see a substitute. and it had some improvements, but it still had some things that we thought were potentially deleterious to the plans, to the City of Atlanta's sponsor, and to our citizens of Atlanta. We voted as a board it's non-binding, but our opinion is that 1589 is written. The substitute that was presented us was inadequate. So by majority, we had some dissension from Mr. Beard and Commissioner Yancey, but the majority of the other trustees voted no. And it was the same with the police and fire boards. And I think potentially I'll let them speak. It might have been a unanimous no there, and we'll let them speak to that. This is my opinion. And this is not necessarily a fact, but the potential for abuse in future generations. Again, no one's alleging that there's anybody here, present or in this administration, that has anything but good intentions. But you have to think about what could be done in the future with what's being proposed. Now, we've been criticized for spending money for an attorney. We don't have any choice. There's too much at stake. We're not trying to waste money. We're trying to prevent the waste of money. That's our job. That's why, in the wisdom of the individuals who put these boards together, they didn't come up with a bunch of people that all had CFAs or had a master's degree in actuarial science, or they looked for people that had integrity and passion. There's three things it takes to be a good fiduciary, a good trustee. It takes integrity, and I believe everybody on the boards that I've served with has that. That includes the people that are ex officio and the people that are appointed, but certainly the people that are elected. And it takes passion, because you spend a lot of hours doing the job and you don't get anything for it in terms of remuneration. I know trustees probably spend, some of them, a good deal of time each month in preparing for board meetings. I don't have too much else really to say. I thank everybody for ceding me lots of time. There's been let me just clarify. There is no lawsuit against the city at this point, but there are times when the city's history, they have sought the wisdom and jurisdiction of courts. This is a huge issue. What's at stake in many ways is, it sounds like hyperbole to say the future of Atlanta. The mayor was right to step in 2010, establish a blue ribbon panel, and force a conversation that people for a long time didn't want to have. And I understood that there were three aims from that historic reform, and that was to prevent ever-increasing chunks of the city budget from going to service the pensions, to make sure that the city's financial risk in periods of suboptimal return on investment in the future were minimized, and also to ensure that we were competitive relative to hiring the very best people that we could to serve the citizens of Atlanta. I think we achieved those aims. I think that you'll find, if you had the time, to be able to talk with people that are opposed to 1589, you'll find that nobody has any problems with some kind of certification process to make sure you have the very best trustees. I think that everybody supports that, all of the trustees. I don't think you'll have any issue with anybody supporting any kind of transparency measure. I don't think you'll have anybody have any issue with an ongoing dialogue, some structured program to discover, develop, and implement best practices relative to managing these pensions and governing them and investing. The boards themselves have already talked organically about getting together quarterly to be able to compare notes and take a look at performance and best practices. Personally, I'm going back to me, I'm not opposed to coming before council a couple times a year to be able to report on performance and other things. I'm not opposed, personally me, to establishing some kind of sister cities analogous to a sister cities program where the council finds what they consider in their wisdom to be best practices relative to managing pensions and going out shadowing or attending their meetings or dialoguing with them. There's all things that can be done that leave the responsibility for the investment in the hands of the individuals who have, I won't say there aren't a lot of people with a vested interest, but have the most interest. Those that have spent many, many, many years in contributing to these plans. Myself, this is December 1st was my 31st year with the City of Atlanta. And so people say that they don't have a lot to gain. I understand that, and I respect that sentiment, but also look at the other side. You want people that have a lot to gain or lose to be the people that are watching over the money. There are three main fiduciary responsibilities. You have the fiduciary duty, or duties rather, of loyalty, and that's to act on behalf of all the participants, all the stakeholders, but primarily for the participants. That's not a local sentiment. That's well-known premise for fiduciaries and particularly trustees. You have a fiduciary duty of care where it's our obligation to be able to treat that money like it's our very own and not waste it, and to consider if fiduciary's primary duty is to preserve capital. And we have the fiduciary duty of prudence, which is, as a subtenant, allows us the prudent investor rule to be able to hire and cede a measure of our authority. We retain the ultimate responsibility, but a measure of our authority to experts. We regularly coordinate the activities of law firms, investment consultants, investment managers, actuaries, and third-party administrators. And so I would say that it's easy to say that if we have more professionals that we'll do better, but I'm not sure that an investigation will bear that out. So we ask you to, in your wisdom, knowing the old adage, haste makes waste, to continue. It's laudable to act quickly, but too quickly is haste. And I don't believe that you have enough of the facts that you'd like to have to make an informed decision. And I believe in the zeal to be able to accomplish more in limited time, that we've missed a couple steps that leave us exposed relative to the passage of this measure. If you look at what's been accomplished in the last 8 years, it's really incredible. I think everybody that's been involved in that needs to get a round of applause. And I know a lot of times the things that you do go unappreciated, or as the show says, it's unsung. Not giving up at the end is admirable. It's laudable. To be able to, till the bell rings, to be able to throw the last punch or take the last swing. But please, I'm personally begging you to take the time to consider that everyone here, as we've considered you honorable, consider everyone here honorable as well, and that we have something to say, and that we've worked as hard as you have to be able to make these plans viable and sustainable, and to do the right thing. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
I'm Jeanette Cooper. I work as an actuary for the City of Atlanta General Employees Pension Fund, and I'd like to cede my time to the attorney who's going to speak next.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who'd like to cede their time to the attorney who's going to speak next? Come on forward, Mr. Attorney. I think you're up. Are you?
I've been called worse things, yes. Well, thank you for having me.
1 second, though. Is anyone else who'd like to cede their time? Okay. You've got a total of 4 minutes. All right.
Thank you.
Start. Your name and your firm.
got it. My name is Dan Fainer. Once again, I'm a partner with the law firm of Morgan Lewis, and by now this council likely knows we serve as outside counsel for the General Employees Pension Fund. By way of background, in addition to practicing in the private sector, I've served in the United States Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. I'm here today to make certain remarks, but I want to certainly lead with the fact that if the proposed Ordinance 1589 is passed in its current form or in any form that either affects the governance of the pension board or otherwise strips the rights of the board's beneficiaries, I've been authorized to institute litigation to declare it to be invalid and to seek to enjoin the implementation of this proposed ordinance. I understand that representatives from the other pension boards and other interested parties are also in attendance. Some have already spoken on behalf of their beneficiaries in opposition to this proposed ordinance, and I urge you to take that fact into great consideration. There seems to be a united front amongst the pension boards in opposition of this proposed ordinance. We are all aligned in that regard. And I suspect that you'll learn or have learned that the General Employee Pension Fund's concerns with the proposed ordinance are shared among these stakeholders. And I understand from prior written submissions that the interested parties are aligned in their opposition on several points, including the very fact that the city's own charter requires Section 3507 that it follows certain process and there are certain mandated procedures. In that vein, please consider that my remarks incorporate by reference all prior correspondence and submissions to this body, and that's including letters dated October 25th, 2017 and November 7th, 2017 to City Attorney Jeremy Berry from Morgan Lewis, and letter dated November 7th, 2017 to City Council members from GEPF Board Chairman Doug Strachan, from whom you've heard, as well as letter dated November 9th, 2017 to Mr. Berry from Council for the Firefighters Pension Board, Mr. Emerson, also from whom you've heard today. I'd like to speak to the process generally. Much has been made of that, and for good reason. The city failed to follow its own mandated procedure. First and foremost, and most significantly, is it failed to provide a bona fide actuarial report. The changes contemplated by this proposed ordinance will have an impact that should be analyzed by an actuary. The actuarial report that I saw was simply a one-page cursory analysis that provided very little analysis whatsoever and certainly didn't meet the minimum qualifications under 3507. I learned just in advance of last week's General Employee Pension Fund Board meeting that a new actuarial report would be submitted. I learned that from Ms. Yancey in communication. It never was. I've never seen it. I urge, as others have, that an actual actuarial report be submitted before that you consider this ordinance and consider passing it. I also understand that the city failed to provide notice to and seek the recommendation of the Atlanta Board of Education. You will hear from that board's attorney, which is significant. For whether 3507 requires adoption by a majority of the ABE board before or after passage of any ordinance affecting the board, the reality is that passage of this ordinance would lead to an unworkable outcome. As ABE is within the GEPF, and the GEPF board would be consolidated into this contemplated super board of 15 members, it's difficult to fathom how a consolidated super board would operate without the inclusion and the affirmation from, in a majority vote, the ABE. Now, secondly, the proposed ordinance also fails both prongs of the validity standard, and if we should institute litigation, that will be something the court considers. Number one, the city doesn't have the authority to modify the composition of the boards. The pension boards are independent bodies. Governance issues are reserved by the General Assembly, and modification of the boards would therefore require General Assembly approval. Secondly, this ordinance is not reasonable. This consolidates too much power. If I might have an additional few seconds to finish my sentence, Mr. President. Of course, go right ahead. It consolidates too much power in one person, the mayor in this case, and would likely constitute a power grab. And again, secondly and importantly, it strips the rights of the stakeholders, the folks that elected their own representatives from their body. As Doug previously articulated,
I think your time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the additional time.
Thank you.
Mr. President, may I make a comment quickly, please? As City Attorney, now hearing a threat of litigation and an authorization of litigation, I advise the Council not to respond to the comments made during public comment, knowing that there's a threat of litigation, which we just heard.
Duly noted. Thank you.
And we also, to that point, will recommend an executive session for further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Your name and affiliation.
Yes, good morning. My name is Cheryl Shaw. I'm an attorney with Nelson Mullins here in Atlanta, and we represent the Atlanta Board of Education. Certain active and retired employees of the Atlanta Board of Education participate in the General Employees Pension Fund. The interest of those school system participants are represented by appointed representatives who currently serve on the fund's Board of Trustees established by the Act of General Assembly. City Charter Section 3-507 says that any modification to the Act that affects employees of the Atlanta Board of Education will not be binding on the Atlanta Board of Education employees unless and until the modification is approved by majority vote of the Atlanta Board of Education. The pension ordinance as proposed modifies the Act and affects the Atlanta Board of Education employees by effectively diluting or removing the voice of the school system representatives in investment plan, in the plan investment decisions. Accordingly, we're concerned and believe that the vote of the Atlanta Board of Education is required before that ordinance can bind employees of the Atlanta Board of Ed. I am here today to share with you those concerns and to inform you that the Atlanta Board of Education has not been provided with the opportunity to review the proposed ordinance or to vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beard.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to start out by saying on November 17th was the work session which we started this. I am and have been a vocal supporter of the legislation. So Police and Fire yesterday made a comment that said that I supported the recommendation to adverse this particular piece of legislation. While I made the motion as a parliamentary procedure in order to have them on the record as providing this body a non-binding recommendation, the record should reflect that I did not support said recommendation. Also, having their recommendation would preclude them from saying they weren't given proper notice since they did vote on it. We've heard a lot of talk about there being great returns and all those things. What nobody's talked about is risk. These funds right now sit in what I would call a risk-on position, and nobody's talked about.
Mr. Beard, really quickly.
Okay, nobody's talked about the downside risk.
I thought you were going to. I mean, we're gonna have a lengthy conversation about this when we get to the paper. But
at the end of the day, I'm fully in favor of the changes we made the changes that are being proposed in order to move forward and get this through, and to talk about absolute return versus risk-adjusted returns and all these other things that people are putting up to as scare tactics. It's just not relevant in the conversation.
All right, thank you. And what I was going to say is that you're going to have plenty of time to say that when we get to the paper.
Very well, sir.
Over and over again.
But it was in public comment, so I wanted the record reflect that while the motion was made by me in order to move forward and have a non-binding vote by these bodies, I did not support that position.
Okay, gotcha. Understood. All right, so now I think we're done with public comment if no one else has public comment. Okay, Ms. Adrian.
Colleagues, I'd like for us to take up 17, take up the pension paper first before the bond paper. That's what all the public comments about, and we're holding up.
So I need to get a BPA signed, so I would ask that it shouldn't take me long to walk through that part of the presentation.
How long is it going to take for us to handle this?
Less than 10 minutes for my paper, sir.
Adrian, is that fine by you, or what's your pleasure? All right.
Okay. All right. So we have 2 items on the agenda before we get to the pension item. We have, all right, colleagues, let's go ahead and make our way to our seats. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to try to get through this quickly as possible. Okay, I'll entertain are we ready, Madam Clerk? All right, I'll entertain a motion to re-enter regular session or exit executive session. We have a motion from Mr. Martin, seconded by Ms. Norwood. Madam Clerk, let's take the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote on the motion to exit executive session and return to the orders of the day. Would everyone please vote?
Colleagues, let's vote.
Would everyone please vote? Okay. Yes, the vote is closed. 10 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, 10 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. We're now back into regular session. Mr. Shook, we've read the paper. We need to commence conversation by way of a motion. Who's going to make a motion? All right, there's a motion from Mr. Bond with a second from Mr. Hall to adopt this ordinance. Is there any conversation? Any questions? Yes, Ms. Adrian and then Ms. Bottoms.
Is there a way to, does it make sense to consider both papers at the same time? Or do the resolution first or something?
Yeah, if there's no objection, we could take the resolution first. I mean, if
I'll defer to the chair, but it seems like you can't really have a conversation about one without the other.
All right, so if there's no objection from the body, we will tinker with the agenda a little bit. Ms. Smith.
We're waiting on the latest, the complete paper for the resolution, but we're just waiting on the final copy of it.
All right, so Ms. Smith, what we're going to do per Ms. Adrian's request, we're going to take up your resolution now, so let's read it in, and then we'll discuss it in context of the paper that's the main paper, and then we'll pass on your resolution. You can do it there.
And point of whatever, not privilege, but
You're
point
on.
of law department. I need the final copy because I had that last thing that didn't get in there about the 1 year. So I'm going to start reading, and it should just be one of the last things. So,
Councilmember, we're working on that. I'll get that to you ASAP.
okay, so I'm going to read page 1 and start of page 2, and then it'll be section 4 will be the thing that we put in that we forgot from yesterday. All right, and then a resolution by, I'm going to do the Rhonda Johnson thing. Carla Smith, do you want to do it? Hall. Young. I'll slow down. I can't write that fast. Young, Winslow, Archibong. Okay, Juan. Where is he? Okay, we'll wait. Mr. Shook. Ms. Adrian. Mr. Martin. Bottoms. Mr. Bond? Yes. Thank you. You're present, huh? All right. Ms. Norwood? Was that a yes? Thank you.
Do you want to be added? The question is, do you want to be added to the resolution?
Talking about the resolution, do you want to sign on? Okay. All right, so it's a resolution expressing the intent of the Atlanta City Council to introduce an ordinance altering the composition of the newly created City of Atlanta Defined Benefit Pension Plan Investment Board of Trustees at its first regular meeting in January 2018 and for other purposes. Whereas the this is not exactly true, but the Atlanta City Council has passed Ordinance 17-0-1589, and whereas Ordinance 17-0-1589 changes the governance structure of the city's existing 3 pension plans and creates one consolidated board of trustees, the investment board, to implement the police officers' pension plan, the firefighters' pension plan, and the general employees' pension plan. And whereas the new investment board will be responsible for making all investment decisions for the police officers' pension plan, the firefighters' pension plan, and the general employees' pension plan, which includes investing their separate assets together while accounting for assets of each fund separately. And whereas the Council wishes to alter the composition of the new investment board created by 17-0-1589 to create representation by pension participants that more closely reflects pension participant representation on the previous 3 separate pension boards. And whereas the Atlanta City Council recognizes the need to immediately implement the pension governance reform reflected in 17-0-1589 without delay. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, hereby resolves as follows. Section 1, that the newly elected Atlanta City Council consider modifying the existing investment board to be as follows. Number 1, the chair. The investment board shall have an independent chair who shall be appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Atlanta City Council to a 1 term of 5 years with relevant financial services industry experience, preferably in the area of investments. The investment board chair shall have no familial or business ties to the City of Atlanta or the Atlanta Public Schools. Number 2, the vice chair. The vice chair of the investment board shall be, the mayor or his or her designee. Number 2, 2 members elected from every 3 years by active and retired City of Atlanta participants in the City of Atlanta General Employees Pension Plan. 2 members elected every 3 years by the active and retired participants in the City of Atlanta Police Officers Pension Plan. 2 members elected every 3 years by active and retired participants in the City of Atlanta Firefighters Pension Plan. Number 6, 1 member elected every 3 years by active and retired Atlanta Public Schools participants in the City of Atlanta General Employees Pension Plan. Number 7, 1 member who shall be appointed annually by the Atlanta Board of Education. Number 8, 1 member who shall be appointed annually by the mayor and who shall be a participant. Okay, I think let's see, is this correct? Is this the one? Let me double check my work here. Help me with this, Kwanzaa. I think this is the person that we took out. You have my list. The member shall be appointed annually by the mayor. Mayoral appointment. Okay, let's skip that one. Right, so that one. Okay, so we're going to remove number 8. That one, there is no number 8. Law Department, please note, there is no number 8. Number 9, the Chief Financial Officer of the City of Atlanta. Number 10, the Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources of the City of Atlanta. Number 11, one member of the Atlanta City Council elected annually by a majority vote of that body. Oh, and then the last one's the actuary. Okay, one member appointed by the mayor, and did we say that? I'm reading it as it's going to be done. So note this. One member which has actuary experience, the council will send, Mr. Law Department, are you paying attention so you can change this? The council will send 3 names to the mayor, and then the mayor will pick the appointment, and then it will come back to council to confirm. So that is the one member with actuary experience. Did y'all get that? Okay. Section 2, that the newly elected Atlanta City Council consider adding the following transparency requirements for the new Investment Board of Trustees and each of its committees, whether established or ad hoc. Number 1, the Investment Board and each of its committees shall comply with the requirements of the Georgia Open Records Act and the Georgia Open Meetings Act. Number 2, all meetings of the Investment Board and any of its committees shall be televised on Channel 26 or its equivalent. Number 3, the Investment Board shall create and maintain, that's you, Gina, with the Channel 26. The Investment Board shall create and maintain a website where, at a minimum, the following shall be available online: the names and resumes of all trustees and their terms of appointment, notices of all meetings, approved minutes and all meetings, quarterly investment reports and bylaws. Excuse me. Number 3, Section 3, that the newly elected Atlanta City Council consider requiring the Investment Board to report quarterly to the Finance and Executive Committee. And Section 4, that the newly elected Atlanta City Council consider requiring a review of the effect of the new pension governance structure no later than 12 months following its implementation. Do I make a motion to approve yet, or do I just sit down? What do I do? Mr. President, what do I do? Okay, my motion is to approve.
Second. Winslow to the punch.
The Channel TV's in there. Channel 26 is in there. Yeah, we put it in there. Okay.
Contemplate. Right. Clerk makes a good point because the resolution contemplates the piece. So you're read in. You will not have to read it in again?
I won't have to read it in again.
No, you won't. So we'll come to yours after?
Right, because we kind of need to pass that first one in order for this one to make sense in the whereas clause.
So let's go ahead and deal with the motion before us, the main motion before us right now, which is to adopt. Did you, on the main paper, did you get the motion to adopt? You have that recorded? Okay, so we're going to go to the third item on the printed agenda, council members, and we're going to take that item up. We have a motion before us to adopt Ordinance 1589. The motion was made by Council Member Bond. It was seconded by Council Member Hall. That paper is now before us. Do we have any conversation or discussion on that? I feel like either Miss Adrian or Miss Bottoms had something to say. We're doing the main ordinance now. We've got the resolution read in so that it makes sense when we get to it. So we're going to take up the main ordinance right now. And then we'll do the resolution right after. Okay. Does anyone, we have the ordinance before us. Mr. Shook. Ms. Bottoms, did you have? Okay. Okay. All right. Mr. Shook, did you have anything?
Vote open.
Not yet. I haven't opened it. Miss Adrian went to. Okay. We'll give it a second. Yeah, I'm just going to give Ms. Adrian a chance to make it back. While we're taking up the ordinance, I think all colleagues, all council members have received a copy of the resolution, which we'll take up next. I don't think I need. I think I've already got it. Okay. All right. Okay, we have before us we have before us a motion to adopt the main ordinance, which is Ordinance 1589. And if there are no questions, no comments, if there's no unreadiness, Madam Clerk, let's open up the vote on the motion to adopt Ordinance 1589, which is item number 3 on the agenda, which is the ordinance to consolidate the pension boards.
Ready?
Just making sure I'm double checking everything.
Are we ready, Mr.?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay.
No one has any questions. There seems to be no unreadiness.
The vote is open. On the motion to adopt Ordinance 17-0-1589 as substituted. Please vote.
Yes, Ms. Shahar.
Good afternoon. This is Robin Shahar from the Law Department. I want to be very clear that the ordinance that is being voted on is not a substitute. This is the ordinance as written on your agenda today. There is also in that packet the actuarial opinion, the Law Department opinion, and the CFO opinion. So all of that is before you without substitution.
Why was... Yeah. The motion was to adopt the ordinance. I don't think
So
we don't have a
has the ordinance been changed? So it was on the table as previously substituted by the Finance Executive Committee.
That's the one that's before us, correct?
That's what's before us.
Okay, so Ms. Shahar,
Right.
Ms. Shahar, the item that was on the agenda that we moved forward from from the last council meeting was a document that was an ordinance that had been substituted in committee. Is that the one before us? What we have before us is an ordinance as substituted by the Finance Exec Committee, not substituted by council.
Correct.
Okay.
The paper before you, the substitute before you dates back to September of 2017. Since that time, there has been no change to the legislation.
Okay.
But that's correct.
Also, to be, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
To be clear, the substitution was by the Finance Executive Committee on September 27, 2017.
Okay. Very good. So what we have before us is a motion to adopt Ordinance 1589, which is a substituted ordinance substituted by the Finance Executive Committee. Okay. That is what's before us. There has been no substitution at this meeting.
That is
what you
correct.
wanted to make clear.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Had there been a substitute, I might add, Mr. President, it would have had to have been brought forward. But we always note if it is on substitute from previous action.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think they just got a little alarm when they heard you say the word substituted.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 10 yeas, 4 nays.
10 yeas, 4 nays, the motion carries. This item is adopted. Ms. Adrian, did you have? Okay, all right. Mr. Shook.
Now back to the resolution.
Yes. Okay, there's a motion to adopt by Ms. Smith, seconded by Mr. Hall. This is a resolution read in by Council Member Smith, as introduced by her and co-signed by several council members. All right, any questions on this item, this resolution, 4757?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Adrian, and then Mr. Shook.
Well, colleagues, I apologize. I have several copies of the the substituted ordinance, but none of them are dated, so I don't know which one we're on. But at any rate, there was supposed to be an amendment that changed the audit requirements, and I wonder if Ms. Shahar, did that part get changed in the August substitution, the type of audits? Because I've got all your work in here, but none of it's dated, so I can't tell if the audit part got fixed.
Kristen Dennis with the Law Department. I believe that the amendment that you're speaking to was to have happened subsequent to the original substitution, and so I don't believe it's been incorporated.
Well, I mean, I don't know if your intention is with this resolution to cure everything that was wrong with the original legislation, but it doesn't have the appropriate audit, because there's two audits. There's an experience audit and there's an actuarial audit. The experience audit can be done by your own actuary, but the actuarial audit has to be done by an independent auditor. And that is in the legislation you just passed, and it's incorrect. So I would like you to correct it in this resolution, please.
Okay. Put it in the form of an amendment, a friendly amendment.
Ms. Denius, can you write that up for me real quick, please? Thank you.
Okay, so you're gonna.
We can vote on her friendly amendment.
Resolution.
You said that's a that's a
friendly amendment to the resolution we're going to vote on.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it can be a friendly amendment. It's friendly, but it's a lot. So
right.
So we're going to get it We're going to get it written up. All right. So we're going to get it written up per Ms. Adrian's request and the clerk's advice. Mr. Shook, I know you had comment to make. Okay. So Mr. Shook has an amendment. So we'll wait on these amendments to be prepared. Mr. Shook, do you want to discuss your amendment as well, just so folks will have a sense of it? Or do you want to wait?
That's fine, but I'm going to actually be talking to Ms. Smith and Mr. Hall. It was the three of us who spent 2.5 hours in there, And what I remember regarding the discussion around the proposed new board configuration was a general, informal, preliminary interest in it. But it was also very clear to me that we were being asked not to put it in that level of specificity in this resolution because the stakeholders needed to go back and confer with the other members of their groups. So my amendment is pursuant to the spirit of that exchange, and in it I would like to take out or to amend Section 1 that is in list form with every explicit slot, and instead simply say that the newly elected Atlanta City Council consider modifying the existing investment board so as to include an appropriate mix of experts in finance, investing, HR, as well as elected officials and plan participants. That's my amendment.
There's a motion to amend as made by Mr. Shook. Is there a second?
Second.
We all have the actual amendment before us, so we can, everyone has a copy of it. We can take it up now once the clerk digests it. All right, and so we have a motion. Who provided the second? Okay, Mr. Martin provided the second. We have a motion, a second. Are there any questions associated with this amendment? There being none, Madam Clerk, let's take the vote on the motion to amend.
The vote is open. Please vote.
Thank you.
Would everyone please vote? Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. 13 yeas, 0 nays.
13 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The document is amended. That was the Amendment 1, Shook 1. Okay, so now we're waiting on Amendment 2, Adrian 1, to come before us. I think it's being prepared. Does anyone else have any comment or question regarding the resolution as amended thus far? All right. We'll just take a moment and wait for the next amendment. Okay, I think everyone has a copy of the amendment, the Adrian amendment, which is Amendment 2. Adrian 1. Ms. Adrian, do you want to rehash that amendment one more time before we then...
May I just read it in?
Yes.
All right. This legislation is amended to state that any further future... Whoops, this is Trinity. All right, sorry. It's a new Section 5 to read that the newly elected Atlanta City Council consider adding a requirement for an experience audit of all three funds to be performed at least every 3 years and an actuarial study to be performed by an independent actuary every 3 to 5 years. And this is actually best practices, and I think it's probably even a law, I don't know, but the paper that was passed didn't have this requirement, and it's very important because if the pension funds don't keep track of their assumptions that they're making, they can make bad assumptions about how to fund the plan, and if the assumptions aren't challenged by an independent actuary, you can end up getting in trouble with your funding. So it's really important that this be done, and it hasn't been done regularly in the past years. And then the experience audit, the regular auditor can do it, and they just simply compare their assumptions to the real experience. And both of these exercises are necessary in order to make sure we're funding things properly.
Okay, and so that's your motion? All right, there's a motion, a second from Mr. Dickens, a motion made by Ms. Adrian to amend this paper as stated. Any discussion on that motion? There being none, Madam Clerk, let's take the vote.
The vote is open. Has everyone voted? Please vote. The vote is closed. Wait. 13 yeas, 0 nays.
13 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. The paper is amended. We have the paper amended before us. Is there a motion to adopt as amended? All right. There's a motion to adopt as amended. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Bond. Any discussion on the motion to adopt as amended? There being none, Madam Clerk, let's take the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote. The vote is closed. 13 yeas, 0 nays.
13 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. This resolution is adopted. Mr. Shook.
There is no more Finance Committee related items, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Shook. We'll now move to any items for immediate consideration. I know, Mr. Hall, you had mentioned that you have items for immediate consideration.
You know, colleagues, y'all going to thank me because I did this just for you all. I knew we weren't going to have any more papers, but just in case that meeting that we came out of needed additional legislation, I had some things in the hopper. So we don't need anything, so we're free to go.
All right. You're a good man, Kwanzaa Hall.